We got 2 o'clock. We'll go ahead and start this meeting, call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chief Thornton,
Here.
Captain Ward,
Here.
Brandy Davis,
Here.
Lily Pike,
Here.
Dee Dee Hayes,
Here.
Battalion Chief England.
Okay. First on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 2020 meeting. We did not have a February meeting that was postponed. Originally had some conflicts, and then the weather postponed the second date. So there is no February meeting. So to have a motion for approval of the January 2021 minutes.
Motion.
I have a motion. To have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Captain Ward, Brandy Davis,
Aye.
Lily Pike,
Aye.
Dee Dee Hayes.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the old business. First item is the lack of EMS units for calls. In the report from Central Dispatch 2021, so far there have been 22 calls, and it was in January that was rolled to other units. Mr. Childers, could you come address why those calls are being rolled and what we can do to help improve that situation?
Yes, sir, Chief. In January, obviously, we were still dealing with some COVID outbreaks within the organization and had people quarantined at that point. Rolled calls, our service rolled calls voluntarily to other services, transport calls as well. And that was just to keep us on key for our response times here in the city of Decatur for the 911s. Since that time, I think, to be honest, the COVID has pretty much ran through our whole building. And we're back on track with the additional units that we lacked at that point in time. So we're on par now.
Yeah, is your units and staffing, is it up different than what it was in January?
Yes.
You know what the difference in your unit staffing is?
At some points in times, we had as many as 8, 9, 10 people out. At this point in time, we only have 2 that are out at this current period of time, along with new hires. So I don't know the percent to say that what we're up, but we have additional staffing and the paramount units.
Okay. The next item on the old business is the ordinance changes. While you're up here, could you just go ahead and address those ordinance changes that you have
Sure.
asked for?
I think the 2 main ones that we want to look at today, and I know this is a task that'll have to be taken on down the road by you guys as well as the city council. 2 things that we really want to concentrate on today. Number 1 is the audited financial statement. We think that we don't do an audited financial statement every year. We do a financial statement. It's completed by Ms. Lynn Reeves with Quinn, Howe, Strickland, and Law, CPA firm here in Decatur, highly regarded firm. The difference in the audited and the non-audited is basically about $15,000 for the audited. And we think that we could utilize that money in other fashions to help the company, the system, the employees in the city of Decatur, rather than putting that out for an audited financial statement. I can tell you, after working with Ms. Reeves since 2012, her audited is not going to be any different, the final numbers, than it is with the annual financial. They are not going to deviate from their CPA guidelines. And we just think that the money could be utilized in a better fashion than a piece of paper, lack of better words.
All right. Can you go over the rest of them?
The next one I'd like to address is the ambulance unit. And Captain, you had asked January it was, about that. We took a harder look at our percentile of failures. Jason, you have the handout. And we look back over the year 2020 of our units that we have and the number of calls we ran versus the numbers of failures that we had. Jason has a handout. He's going to give that out to you. if I could have one as well.
Thank you.
Jason. Jason. Can I get one of them?
We look back at the year of 2020, call volume, response, request for calls, service, and we looked, there was 16,800 or so requests of service. We had 13 mechanical malfunctions while transporting and/or going en route to a call. If you look at your sheet, that's a 0.0008% mechanical malfunction. I can only say that there's plenty of ambulance providers out there that wish they could have that kind of percentile of mechanical failures. So we wanted to bring that to the ARB's attention. I know we've been focused, this board has been focused on new trucks. With that being said, we've compared trucks and aircraft and maintenance. I think these numbers presented to you today will show that proper preventative maintenance, it really doesn't matter the year model truck that you have, the color truck you have, and are the miles to some extent. When it comes to maintenance, if you take care of your trucks, they will take care of you. Again, a 0.0008% vehicle failure rate while transporting or en route to a call.
That's true. I think it's almost a play on that a little bit, though. I think you're right. You've had 13 breakdowns while going on a call or going en route, but I also think you probably had a much higher instance of mechanical problems while not transporting with those trucks, correct?
Well, Chief, if we see something, if we see fluid leaking from a truck, anything of that nature, it's checked out. When we have our regular service completed with Brian, he goes over the trucks. Again, he's got a check sheet. We don't have it with us. That he checks certain things about the vehicle, drivetrain, radiator, depending on the time of the year, condenser and things of that nature. So if you're wanting to count stuff things that we sent to the shop to get repaired that could have went bad on a call, it could be higher. But we were fortunate to catch anything prior to and keep this number very, very low.
I agree. Like I said, I know we have our fire trucks is a fairly new fleet, and the number of mechanical breakdowns on calls, our percentage are probably even lower than what this is. I don't remember very many, but I do know that we have multiple mechanical issues with the trucks where we have a problem with something that has to be
Definitely
fixed.
you have to address
So
it as it comes
this
up.
kind of makes it look like there's nothing really wrong with it. The ambulances, that you don't have any problems with them, and how this is laid out. So that's good on the breakdowns on calls. That's a good percentage on that. You got anything else on this one, or do you?
No, that's all on that one, sir.
Okay. You want to cover? If you just cover all these, that'd be great. The ones
I
that
don't have my sheet with me. I'd left it at the office on the 5 requests.
Chief England, do you?
Time exemptions are not time exemptions, but response times. We're looking to go to the national standard, the NFPA standard, in which most of the rest of the nation goes by, or either it's not as restrictive. We're asking to go by that in the city. And as far as our police jurisdiction, as we all are aware when we look at our police jurisdiction on our map, everything's not symmetric. We have police jurisdictions where you have to go through 3 different other police jurisdictions to get to that one specific area. It's impossible to make some of these calls in 12 minutes. It's impossible. And we're requesting either that we be totally exempt from the response times of the police jurisdiction, and/or we require the police jurisdiction response time for the Bravo, Delta, and Echoes to be 20 minutes as it is in the rest of the county. When we look at the police jurisdiction, in all fairness, it is the county. And if we look at the layout of the police jurisdiction, we find out that it's impossible to travel safely to some of the areas within the police jurisdiction, even within the 15 to 20 minutes. And we would request that either to delete that requirement and/or replace it with the 20-minute requirement in which the rest of the county has.
Yeah, so you addressed the number one item on your email that you sent us, the city, the times in the city. You addressed number two. What you asked for 20 minutes in the PJ was the second item on the email you sent.
Mm-hmm.
The third one was talking about the monetary penalty. Can you talk about that?
Yes. When you look at the monetary penalty, it's just out of line with any other place in the state of Alabama or the nation. Do we feel like there needs to be monetary penalties? Sure. And we addressed that with a $2,500, I believe it was, for the first one, and if it was a contiguous quarter, it was at $5,000. We asked that the penalties be deleted because that's really a double penalty if you're going to get monetarily penalized as well as points as well. And when we look through other cities, towns within the state of Alabama, you're not going to find anyone that has a $2,500 penalty or above that penalty. So we would request the $2,500 on the first one, and if it was a contiguous quarter, then the $5,000. And we're open for, if there was to be 3/4 contiguous, we're open to suggestions on that. But we feel like the $2,500 is, again, more than any other city or town within the state and the outer lying states. So we would ask that that be looked at closer.
Number 4 on your email is delete the point system.
Yes, sir. Again, we feel like if we're going to be monetarily penalized, it's kind of a double jeopardy issue with the point system as well.
All right, just to review what you said in your email. Number 1, you just want to go from the 480 seconds to 540 seconds.
Yes, sir. That's the NFPA standard in 4.1.2.1.
The second item, number 2, in the PJ, it was 720 seconds, and you're wanting to go to 20 minutes response time.
And/or delete the response time requirement for the police jurisdiction.
And/or delete it.
Yes, sir. I feel like the 20 minutes actually is the better route to take because the rest of the county is held to a 20-minute response time as well.
All right. Number 3 on your email is change the monetary penalty from $10,000 to $2,500 for first quarter violations, and from $20,000 to $5,000 of consecutive quarters.
Yes, if it's contiguous, yes.
There is a points system set up for making these fractal times, and you want to get rid of that completely.
Yes, sir.
That was number 4. Number 5 on your email is you want to remove the audited financial statement. You just want to use your financials.
Yes, sir, prepared by a reputable firm.
So right now, ambulances are required to be 6 years old or newer and 200,000 miles, correct?
Yes, sir.
and you want to change it to 10 years, and if they replace an engine or transmission, it's counted as being new.
Or we get some credit to that. I think we would have to look at that a little bit closer. The captain had asked for me to make a recommendation, and that would be my recommendation. Obviously, if you have a truck that's 2 years old and it has a new engine and transmission, if you've performed proper preventative maintenance on it, again, we look at that and coincide that with our 0.0008% malfunction while transporting or responding to a call. I think we're on the right track with where we're going in with our units.
Is there anything else you'd like to go over with on this email?
I think at this time, that's enough for the board to consider at this point in time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We received this email back on February 2nd, and since then we've had time to sit down and look at that. Chief England and Chip Alexander and myself have sat down and looked at that, and we have come up with some stuff that we think might be a fair compromise between what the ordinance originally was and what you've asked for. At this time, Chip Alexander's gonna go over those changes.
Yes, sir, thank you. First of all, I guess as a legal matter, the board has several options about making changes. The changes recommended by Mr. Childers could be approved or recommended to the council for approval. They could be recommended for disapproval to the council, or there could be changes, and those changes, compromises, if you will, could be recommended to the council for their approval. So you've got those options as you're going through them. Just to respond individually to them, I'm sure y'all are as tired of hearing me say this as I am of saying it, but the NFPA standard apply to professional firefighter organizations. It does not apply to private ambulance services. Their time standard says 8 minutes. They're allowed an additional minute for turnout time because fire departments typically are in the station, or they may have to get up and get dressed and get out. And something that's never mentioned in the let's go to the NFPA standard is that for the 8 minute / 9 minute, if you count turnout time, for a firefighter ambulance service, that 9 minute period is contingent on having two things. One is you've got to have turnout time included, and two, your first unit has to be on the scene within 4 minutes. And if your first unit is on the scene within 4 minutes, then the medical unit, the ALS unit, can be there in 9. And I have not heard anybody recommend that a unit from first response be there in 4 minutes to allow them to have the 8 or 9 minutes they are asking for. Further, it's got to be said again that the response time standard was not part of the new ordinance. The 8 minutes and the 12 minutes that are in the ordinance now were in the ordinance the first time Mr. Childers applied for an ambulance service. It was in the second time when he applied successfully, and it has never changed since I've been a part of the city. So it's not something that came about when he asked for this job. Those were the time standards. That being said, to try to move forward and possibly be able to focus on providing ambulance service rather than fighting over how many seconds are in 8 minutes, with his permission, I'm speaking for the EMS coordinator and the legal department. Obviously, it's up for y'all to make the decision. In hoping to provide continued service to the community, we recommend that we change the response time in the city to 9 minutes, beginning at the time the call is dispatched and ending when the ambulance arrives on scene. So I guess the recommendations of what would actually be changed in the ordinance would be that the response time for the city limit calls in the code would be changed to 9 minutes. The section dealing with time exceptions would be eliminated. Rolled calls will not be exempt from fractile response time calculations. If a call has to be rolled to another provider, it would count as a call where the response time was not met. Same arguments basically for the 12 minutes to 20 minutes. It's the same standard as when they started, the same standard as when they applied. I will note one thing that has changed about the police jurisdiction. A few years ago, when there were strong arguments against the response time in the police jurisdiction, council member who is close with first response spearheaded and got the police jurisdiction reduced from 3 miles to 1.5 miles from the city limits. So what they're asking for is with 50%, they're asking for 50% more time to cover 50% less territory, which does not make any sense. The coverage area they have to do is not impacted by, the only impact is that there's less ground to cover, and there's no reason to change that, but we are willing to increase it to 13 minutes to be consistent with the other ones. So the changes we'd be looking at there are that, what the other ambulance services run in the county is none of our concern. If Lifeguard wants to take 6 hours to get from Hartselle to Eva, that is not our problem, but we want our people to be dealt with in a timely fashion. So what we're agreeing to, or what we're recommending as far as the PJ, is that the response time for the police jurisdiction calls and the code be changed to 13 minutes, the section dealing with time exceptions be eliminated, and roll calls not exempt from the fractal response time calculations. So if it has to be rolled to another provider, it'll count as a call where the response time standard was not met. At the time when the new ordinance was being considered, the most consistent complaint, and the council listened to those complaints and still enacted the ordinance as it was, but the most consistent complaints were anything that dealt with mechanisms to enforce the code. Most provisions, time standards, and other things were in the original code. What we didn't have was a way to enforce those other than revocation of the CPNC. What we did by the point system and by the financial penalties was provide intermediate discipline to try to encourage compliance short of having to do the revocation of the license. We felt that for a lot of things, it was, for a first offense or for missing your time, that revocation was too harsh, and we tried to put these intermediate steps in to induce compliance without having to shut them down. It's not in the city's best interest to lose that intermediate step in enforcement. When we drafted the ordinance, the reason we came up with the $10,000 and $20,000 is we had 5 or 6 people working with us who had experience on ambulances. We tried to determine what it would cost to increase, to add 1 ambulance to the mix on any given day or for a month, and or for a quarter, and we decided it could be done for less, we felt, than $10,000. And the reason we came up with $10,000 for that is we wanted it more expensive to miss the times than it was to put another ambulance on the road. Most of the times are fairly close, and if they could cheaply put on, or for less than the financial penalty, get there on time, that's what we preferred. We had no interest in getting the money if we could just get the response times on time. So it was determined that $10,000 would do that. It should be noticed also that yes, there's nobody else in the state that for a violation you could charge somebody $10,000. But the reason for that is that most, if not all of those, are per incident. If you're late on a call, it could be $100, $150, anything for one incident. We calculated during the time that we were drafting this ordinance, we looked back at the prior quarter for first response, and if we calculated every time they were late and gave that same 150 or whatever penalty for the quarter, it came in at $140,000. So I think the $10,000 cap for an entire quarter was reasonable. While it's our opinion that the fee schedule in place is effective in an effort of showing good faith and against, I will say, against our better judgment, we're willing to cut those financial penalties, but no other financial penalties in half. So the financial penalty for failure to have a 90% fractile response time of 9 minutes for emergency calls within the city should be reduced to $5,000 for the first quarter and $10,000 for consecutive quarter failures. And the financial penalty for failure to have a 90% fractile response time of 13 minutes for emergency calls in the PJ should be reduced to $5,000 for the first quarter and $10,000 for the consecutive quarter failure. For those same reasons, we don't think the point system should be scrapped, which is what they're calling for. Again, this is not only is this an effective method of discipline, but also the reason we employed this was along the lines of the only having a revocation or nothing as discipline. If you keep up with points and assign them as you move through a cycle, the council, the public, first response, any other provider, the EMS coordinator can look at the point total and know whether the ambulance company is performing well, performing bad, if we need to be looking for somebody else, or if they're on the edge of losing their license. There is no additional penalty unless their point total reaches a certain point, and it's not double jeopardy. People get fines and points on their license every day down the hall, and that's not double jeopardy. And so that argument is without merit. Like I said, lower point totals, tell them they're doing good, higher, not so well. But, and again, in show of good faith and against our better judgment, we're willing to cut the point assessments for failing to meet response times in half also. So in the city, it would be reduced from 10 to 5 on the first quarter in the police jurisdiction. I'm sorry, I can't, I'm losing my voice. 5 points for the first quarter, 10 points for consecutive quarter failure in either the city limits or the police jurisdiction. We don't feel that the requirement of an audited financial statement should be eliminated. The reason being they were successful in refusing to provide a bond, which was the primary source under the ordinance of trying to protect the city should they shut down in the middle of the night and leave us without coverage. Having the audited financial statement, which has checks and balances that a regular financial statement does not have, gives us some flavor of the financial stability of the company and lets us prepare better if we're going to have to replace somebody. So our request for the request of the provider to eliminate the audited financial statement should go to the council with the recommendation that it not be granted. We don't believe that risking the breakdown of an ambulance on a call is something that should be taken lightly. Allowing the age and mileage, the provider's suggestion would make that risk inevitable. Again, hoping to show good faith, we're recommending the following change. The section dealing with the age of the ambulances will be changed to 7 years, and the section dealing with the mileage of ambulances will be changed to 250,000 miles. We have been dealing for years with trying to get some ambulances starting to be bought for a long time. It was because of the bond. It was also for, well, first it was for the new the CPNC expiring in a year. Then it was for the bond. Now it's to have the ordinance completely rewritten. So along with having those changes made, we're recommending, not that this be recommended to the council, but that the ARB adopt the following schedule: that the provider should be required to add 3 ambulances meeting these standards by the end of this year, which is something I believe they have said they would do before. The provider should be required to add 3 ambulances meeting these standards by the end of next year, and must be in full compliance with this part of the ordinance by July 1st of 2023. And we do not agree on the rebuilt or new engines. Our position is that rebuilt or new engines and old units will not meet these standards. And since we have given up on trying to enforce the bond requirements, we're also recommending to the council that all references to the performance bond in the code be eliminated. When the last thing I would ask is, when this ordinance was adopted, immediately after it, we met several times with the provider and its attorney. They were very concerned about enforcement of the ordinances and when would they be phased in and how are we going to work this out. We've been treading water for considerably more than a year now. We would ask this board to give notice to the provider that with these proposed changes, whether adopted by council or not, the phasing in time has passed and enforcement is now at full strength, effective immediately, with the exception of the phase-in time of providing new ambulances. And this is an outline for y'all to use if taking votes on what you're going to recommend. And that is on behalf of the EMS coordinator and myself. These are our recommendations based on what they have recommended.
Chip, do we have to vote on these individually, or can we do this as a whole, or how does that have to work?
That's completely up to y'all. If you want to say the bold, that y'all are adopting what I put in bold, then I will go through piece by piece and send that to the council. If you don't, I'll do another place. If you want to do, piece it out, then you can vote on different sections. Either one is fine with me. Just let me know which ones you would want me to take forward.
Chief, can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kirby, we decided anybody that spoke today would give them a 5-minute time limit, please.
I can be brief.
Yes, sir.
My name is Charles Kirby. I live at 1607 Sandra Street Southwest. I've been a resident of this city for more than half a century. We heard earlier about the bond issue. But you'll have to ask Mr. Childers, but I don't believe he has anything in writing that says that's mute, and rescinded in any form. I also understand he doesn't even have a copy of his CPNC. Now, I want to clarify also that the majority of input, which I advised while I was sitting on the council to go to outside professional sources, national sources with helps on these ordinances, which was not done, okay? But the majority input we got was from people who did not live in the city of Decatur. Now that transitions to another topic currently, the police jurisdiction. It's my belief if the police jurisdiction was put for a vote of the citizens of Decatur right now and the PJ, it would fail in both cases. It would be eliminated. But Decatur voters, if they tolerate these rules, they deserve what they get. Whatever they choose to vote for and the representatives they choose to vote for, they deserve. But the PJ people is a different question. They don't get to vote for the people making these rules. So you can make that real easy. Eliminate Decatur calls out in the PJ. Let them go to their county sources where they pay their county taxes to whatever their solution is. Then we don't have to worry about what response times are. That would be the most perfect solution I can imagine. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Mr. Kirby. Mr. Kirby. Hey,
One other point, if I may. A reference was made by somebody close to first response and the PJ being pulled back. I don't know who that person was. I have no idea. I did not lead an effort to pull the PJ back to a mile and a half from 3 miles. I either reluctantly voted for it or opposed it, and certainly the clerk's office could clarify what that vote was.
Mr. Kirby, when you started, you said that, what was your comment you said about him in the bond?
That I don't believe he's holding anything, that bond won't be held over his head. That he's got nothing in writing that says this bond is no longer required, forget about it.
Well, that's what we was gonna vote on.
Just wanted to be clear on that.
And what was you saying about his CPNC? He doesn't have a copy of it?
It's my understanding he does not have a copy and has never had a copy.
Do you have a copy, David?
Chief, we have a copy of our original, non-term CPNC of 2012.
And not since the rules have been changed.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Childers?
Really quickly, in response to the Assistant City Attorney's thoughts on this, the people that have worked on this, I'd like this board to know, have not owned or operated an ambulance service. They're not responsible for a paycheck. They're not responsible for the bottom line of making an ambulance service work. As I'm getting older. That's the first thing. I'd like to talk about what was said about professional fire and NFPA. Exactly right. 80 seconds is given to firefighters to put on their gear to go to fire calls. 60 seconds is given to firefighters to go to get in the ambulance to go to a EMS call. That's in section 4.1.2.1 of the 1710. It also reflects on the fire department being the first responders, which we have here. 60 seconds turnout time, 240 seconds transport time. That's where Mr. Alexander is coming up with his 4 minutes period of time on that. That is for the NFPA, National Fire Professionals, and I think we do have professionals here in the city of Decatur. So my question would be, why are we not holding that to the 400 seconds for the response? As far as points and penalties, what I'm hearing is, and if I'm not correct, please correct me, that the penalties were comprised of how hard do we squeeze to get him to buy new ambulances? Do we penalize him until he's out of money, or do we make him buy new ambulances till he's out of money? I think there might be something illegal about that. We'll find out that later. But that's exactly what I heard, and it's exactly what's on camera. That's how they came up with the penalty system, and the monetary fines. That's not a very good answer. That's not a very good way to come up with a rule to try to help the EMS system, the whole EMS system, within the city of Decatur. Let's just fine them, or they'll get tired of getting fined and buy new trucks. Not a good system. 0.008% breakdown rate. I don't care how you look at it. That is low. To say that we have to go out and buy 3 units and then 3 units the next year, for that, I would like to know the people that came up with this and what their experience is in owning and or managing an ambulance service, not just working at an ambulance service. When we talk about the CPNC and the bond board, the bond was the city's fluke, not the ambulance providers. The city tried every way of making us get a bond when one was not available, and then it came down to our finances. We proved that with a financial statement to the bonding company, and they still denied the bond because of the ordinances, not because of our financial statement. To put $15,000 into a financial statement doesn't promise you I'm going to be here tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or a month from now. That's false. To look at a financial statement, I know plenty of businesses that have left other places that were making money and profitable because they had better opportunities at other areas to make more money and to be more profitable. So the adage of let's see the financial statement to see how they're doing, to see if they're going to survive, is completely bogus. Can anybody in this room tell me what our 2019 audited financial statement said that we gave to the city in March of 2020 on our annual report? Does anybody know?
I do believe Mr. Alexander was the only one that was looking at that because of the stipulations on viewing your financial statement.
And
So
a- and
I
a
haven't
non-
seen it because I wasn't privileged to look at it, I'm sure like everybody else.
And a
in this room.
non-disclosure was signed?
I was told it, I don't know if it was, I know that you asked for one.
There is no non-disclosure signed. That audited financial came with a non-disclosure. Anybody that was to open that had to sign that non-disclosure.
I don't know if he looked at it or not. If anybody looked at it, it would have been him. None of
Right,
us looked at it.
so Chief, you see what I'm saying? We spend $15,000 for somebody to not look at something. If we done another audited financial, we're gonna attach the same non-disclosure. We have that legal right. And nobody's gonna sign it. It's not gonna get, the difference between the regular financial statement and the audited is not gonna tell you how long this company's going to be in business. I can tell you with going out and spending money on brand new trucks as this is going by and the $5,000 penalty and keeping the points, it really doesn't matter what a financial statement says. You got a life expectancy of 3 quarters. So the tail is really wagging the dog here. Again, go to outside sources that are professionals, that have been responsible for operating an ambulance service or owning an ambulance service, and get their opinion. That's what I would encourage. And again, we stand by our suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to speak? Chief England,
Just real brief. Come up there.
please.
Where me and Mr. Alexander looked, and the reason we said that we would require or ask First Response to purchase 3 trucks in 2021 is from First Response's 5-year strategic plan. And in the back of it, it says, First Response will purchase units that meet Decatur Code for use of advanced life support, 3 units before September 2021. This is a 5-year strategic plan that was sent to my office when they renewed their CPNC. So that's where that comes from. The reason we looked at the time exceptions to extend it by 1 minute on each one is because that's something we decided, instead of giving them 8 minutes for the 20 they requested to go 1.5 miles like the county does, we went 1 minute. The reason the county has a 20-minute response time is because you may have a truck in Hartselle that has to travel to Kateka. There's no way they can get there in 10 or 12 minutes. you have to look at the lay of the land, how it works out, not just the time frame. I believe the 13 minutes is fair. I believe the 9 minutes is fair. And this is where we got from their strategic plans, where we came up with the trucks, for 3 trucks for 2021.
And just to throw in on top of that, that in previous ARB meetings, you had asked for 9 minutes and, well, it was actually 8 minutes and 59 seconds, so it's like another second. It was also 12 minutes and 59 seconds, which is another second. So basically, we give what you had asked for in previous meetings with that. Just a quick point too, when you brought up the point about the NFPA, the 400 seconds, that once again, NFPA is referring to fire response. Our first of 4 apparatus on scene is what they're talking about. It's not talking about an EMS response on that. All right, I guess, Chip, I got a question. Do we need to vote on this today, or do we need to let the board members look at this and then vote?
That's completely up to y'all. You got our position. If you want to vote on it today, you can. If you want to vote on it individually, you can. But they finally gave
Right.
what they wanted changed. We reviewed it and came up with our responses to that. And it's for y'all to vote on when y'all want to vote on it.
All right. As a board, do y'all want to take time to look at this and let's vote on it at the next meeting, or do you want to vote today? What
I'd
do y'all
rather
want?
wait.
You want to wait?
I think
All
I'll
right.
get next meeting maybe.
Do we have to have a motion to table this or anything like that?
No, you just,
Okay.
it's,
All right.
it's not set for a vote today. Y'all have to agree to take it up on vote.
All right.
Okay.
Well, then we will review this stuff. If you have any questions, please contact Chief England or Chip about that, and we'll try to get your questions answered the best of our ability on these topics. All right, the next on our agenda would be complaints. Chief England.
We've had 3 complaints filed against first response. Complaint 2021 was filed by Mr. Jeremy Goforth and Dr. Jackson. I've been advised that due to possible future litigation on that we cannot discuss this in a public forum. If it needs to be discussed, we'll have to go into executive session due to a possible future litigation on this. Each of you should have had the email. It was forwarded to you by the request of Mr. Childers. So, the other email, or the other complaint, 2021-2, it's still under investigation with the state of Alabama, so we don't have anything back on that yet. And 2021-3 was an equipment issue that was sent to Mr. Tyndall and Mr. Childers today. So we just opened that one up for investigations today.
What was the number on it?
2021-3.
All right. While you're up here, will you go ahead and talk about the 911 contract with first response?
Per the ordinance, any provider for the city of Decatur must sign a contract with Morgan County Central Dispatch before January 1st of each year. Ms. Ferris advised me earlier that before this, that First Response had not signed a contract with them for this year. I sent First Response an email advising them they need to sign it before February 18th at noon. I believe the contract was signed February 18th at 1:30, 2 o'clock.
So we do have a valid contract with first response.
We do have a valid
911 like it's
contract.
supposed to be.
Yes.
Is any questions or anything about that? Mr. Childers?
Chief, I think it is worth mentioning on what.
Okay. Could you come to the microphone for people to hear? I know it's aggravating, but they can't hear anything back there.
Getting my exercise.
Yep.
think a couple of things we need to look at on the complaint. I don't know if this board received a copy of the 2021-1 complaint. After investigation by the state of Alabama. Did you guys receive that from Mr. Stringer?
I do not have anything from the state.
Okay. There was a letter issued from Mr. Stringer. The state of Alabama did not find any protocol violations with the complaint in 2021-1. The additional complaint 2021-2, when we look at that complaint, there's 5 business days in rules, in section 334, subsection B, after a complaint is received by the EMS coordinator for the investigation to take place. With that, there's some discrepancies on that complaint. The complaint was about a patient refusing transport. And when we look through this, the actual complaint was filed on January 19th, 2021, documented, signed in a written statement by the individual. We were notified March 1st, which is well beyond the 5 days. And then we were notified that it was going to be continued on through on the March 8th is when we were notified on that, which again is beyond the 5
Mr.
days.
You said January 19th, and then what was the other date you give?
January the 19th is when the complainant signed the complaint form on the Decatur fire letterhead. It appears as though the form, or it appears as though this was scanned. These nasty little computers timestamp everything. It appears as though this document was scanned on February 18th, 2021 by daddysworksheets.com on worksheets. So it was scanned over, but the original complaint was January 19th, 2021. We weren't notified until March the 1st, which again is a violation of section 334 of the city code. And then we were notified on March the 8th that it was going to be a continued investigation, which there's nothing within section 334 that allows for continuance of an investigation. So we're well beyond the 5 days on that. If we look back to January the 19th, and also there's some additional information in here that I can't share with you, with photographs and such things of that, also dated to support that this was bound over to the EMS coordinator on or about the 19th of January. Again, section 334 was compromised and violated by not notifying us immediately. And then if we go by the computer stamp date on the bottom of the handwritten complaint, being February the 16th, again, the 5 days, business working days, in section 3 of, or in B of 334, again, that time has ran. So we considered that complaint, we furnished Mr. England the documents that he needed for that. And we considered that one to be over with due to the documents that were supported, as well as due to the ordinance running a 5-day business day investigation. The 221-3 on the equipment failure, we will again discuss that, I suppose, at the next meeting, because we just received that today. It had to do with monitor batteries dying while on a transport, something that every one of us had happen. Radio batteries die in your police car sometimes. They die on the fire engine as well. So we will address that at our next meeting, but I just wanted to give you the finality of both the other complaints. Thank you.
Lieutenant Willis has gone.
Wait till you get up there, please.
Lieutenant Willis has gone and get the file for the second complaint. The second complaint, the lady that filed the complaint, she did not file the complaint until later. And the reason it was later past the time frame, past the 5 days of when I was supposed to advise them 5 days once I received the complaints. When we received this complaint here, I agree with everything he said about being time stamped on the bottom. The reason it's time stamped is because when she scanned it in, as you can see here, she did not use the form I sent her. It's a fillable form. It's a PDF fillable form. She could not use that. So she scanned it in on this template on 2/18 and then sent it to me. That's when I received this complaint. The incident that took place was on January 8th or January 9th. The gentleman was taken to the hospital. I sent first response an email to advise them that there was a complaint filed on March 1st. In the ordinance, it does say that I have to let them know if it's a founded, unfounded, or undetermined complaint. Due to this still being with the state and still being investigated by the state, I advised them that it was an open and ongoing investigation because I had not heard anything back from the state. I was waiting for the state to hear something from them before we took any action on this complaint. I thought that would be the right thing to do. The reason it took the lady such a time to send this back to me or get it in to me was because between when the issue happened, her father was taken to the hospital, her father passed away. Then after that, I talked to her, I told her, I said, take your time, gather yourself. I know you're going through a hard time or grieving process, handle that. And then she called me back later and said she was dealing with her mother who had just been diagnosed with COVID. So once again, I told her, take care of your family, make sure everybody's okay, and email me this stuff. So when I received this complaint, I did not hold on to it. I did not sit on it. I made sure it was sent to them in a proper manner on March 1st. The reason it's scanned on the bottom of the Daddy's worksheet is because that's what she titled her file, that she had it saved on her computer. That's why it's done that way. That's why they didn't get it the time frame he laid out.
So we still hadn't got a,
We still have not
Answer
got
back from the
anything
state.
back from the state.
okay.
I think it's frustrating being accused of holding complaints like this. When I was just trying to make sure that this person who had just lost her father and her mother was sick, make sure she takes care of that.
Have you got the, is there any other discussion on this? All right. Chief Elam, will you do the DFR monthly report? I should, got you to bring it up there.
Okay, you should have these, hopefully I put them in order for you. The Decatur fire for January 2021. For all city calls, we had a 96.8%. And then for the PJ, we had a 100% in the PJ. For the fourth quarter of 2020, we had, in the city limits, we had a 95.6. And in the PJ, we had a 100% response. For February, we had a 91.2 in the city limits. And then in the PJ, we had a 100%.
Any questions? Mr. Tindall or Mr. Childers, which one's on the give?
Good afternoon. All right, for the fourth quarter of 2020, for the city, we had a 90.8% fractal response time, and in the PJ, we had an 88.3% fractal response time for the fourth quarter 2020.
Mr. Tindall, I got a 87.01. Can you tell me where the difference is in that?
It may be, it is possible due to the one time exempt that was not counted, that there was an email that came out after the first report that came from 911, then there was a refraction. There was a time exempt that wasn't counted for, but then was allowed, it was overlooked.
So
That could be the discrepancy.
You got 88.3?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir, and one call would have put us at 90%. Fourth quarter, 2020.
Go ahead.
Okay. For January 2021, for the city, we had a 93.7% response time. For the PJ, also a 93.7, odd as that is, response time as well. For February 2021, for the city, we had a 91.9% fractal response time. And for the PJ, we had 91.3% fractal response time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Any questions?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Board members, if you look at, included also with those times, they have time exemptions that they asked for, and it shows the status of what each one of them, which ones were approved and which ones were denied. All right, has anybody got any questions on the times?
I have a question of where he got the 90%, because I got 87.6
Oh, which one?
for the fourth quarter.
He said 88.3.
Okay.
He got 90.8 on city limits and 88.3 on the PJ.
I thought he said 90.
If there's no other questions, Chief England, give the discipline reviews. I'll pull this thing up.
So, for the fourth quarter, according to the ordinance section 3-24, it says that they must meet a 90% fractile percentage in the PJ per quarter. For the fourth quarter of 2020, first response had an 88% response fractile. Per the ordinance, they have been assessed a financial penalty of $10,000 along with the 10-point assessments. Also, according to the ordinance, they did appeal this to today's ARB meeting for you to look to hear and either uphold, reduce, or rescind this. So, I have, yes, I do. But it's, this financial penalty has been assessed and it's been appealed to you, so it's y'all's decision to either uphold it, or reduce it, or rescind it.
All right, so, they were out of times for their fourth quarter PJ. Did they submit any exemptions for that would get them back within the time limit?
The only exemptions they sent in, all the ones they sent in was either looked at, approved, denied, and there was a few that was submitted outside the required 48 hours time frame. We did have an issue during this time when dispatch was having some difficulty sending the reports to them, and we worked around that issue, and I actually have emails here between myself and Mr. Tyndall stating he needed a little more time, and he was granted that time. You know, he wasn't granted a month, but he was, you know, we understand there's some issues going on, so we asked him just to give it to us when he could. One thing that I did notice is that when Ms. Samantha Sanders sent out the fourth quarter reports to us on January 14th, she sent those out at 10:50 a.m. Between 1:37 and 1:40.
Did you say January 14th?
January 14th, yes, sir. About 2 hours later, Mr. Tyndall sent in 4 requests for calls to be reviewed because they was outside the response time. Those calls were dated for, the date of call was December 9th, December 14th, December 21st, and December 25th. I have a log here of all the emails between me and Mr. Tyndall pertaining to these calls. Along with the call log, I actually have the actual emails printed off, if you would like to look at those. But the 4 calls that he requested after the fourth quarter times were sent out, we did not look at those because I feel like he had long enough time to send these to us. Dispatch had began sending those reports to him December 10th. So he had plenty of time between December 10th and January 14th to send those in for consideration. We also learned this last little bit that historically he's been waiting for dispatch to send him the time reports at night or after midnight for that previous day sometime. And we've recently learned that he has been getting these times since October 14th. So we've worked about that. I've talked to him about getting his system so that they can download the times on their computer real time, I guess you could say. So as soon as the call's ended, the crews will have their times. And there's been some issues with his software. Some water.
So Mr. Tyndall had sent me a couple of ones that he wanted to look at. What was the dates on those?
I believe he sent you, the ones he sent you was back for November, and he sent those on February 1st to be reviewed.
Does anybody got any questions or comments? Mr. Childers?
Just 1 second. This was, a graph was printed off earlier to show the response times in the PJ between December 19th and December 2019 and December 2020.
Chief Engel, it's got dates across the bottom, but what do these lines represent?
It's just how they go up, and then you can see right there in October, took a dramatic fall off.
Is this number of calls or?
Yeah. Actually, the paper here didn't print it all off.
So what are the bars, what are the lines represent?
Horizontal bars.
Is that response time in minutes or something?
The very top line is 100, then it decreases by 5, just percentages. 105, 195, 85, 87. And that correlates to what month, what percentage they got that month.
So the bottom line should be 65. All right.
Chief, in our appeal, we'd submit to the board that there was 2 calls in particular in the county that we asked for exemptions for and did not receive them. Certainly happy to see Ms. Ferris here. I know she loves attending these meetings. The last city council we had, we proved technology errors to the last city council when the $10,000 penalty came up. And it was captured at that point in time. There is technical errors with the system along with human errors. And a fractile world goes by milliseconds, not to do with human error and or technical errors. The fractal response time of the 480 seconds starts, or in this one, the 12 minutes or less, starts when the call is dispatched to the computer in the truck, the CAD, okay, in the truck. That's when it started. We have crews that post in offices. They do not sit in the truck 24 hours a day. There was a call submitted for an exemption on 11. The call date was 11/8. Last 4 digits of the CAD number is 4219. The call was over by 7 seconds. The response time was 12 minutes and 7 seconds. When we look back, and Miss Samantha, she's really done a lot of work on investigating these issues for us. Determined and had an email sent back to Mr. Tyndall that the CAD, it landed on the computer in the truck at 3:46 a.m. 3:46 a.m.36, okay? It wasn't until 3:47.08, 32 seconds later, that it was audibly dispatched. Again, this is not to do with anybody trying to set someone up. This is just the way the system flows, the human factor, the technology. We try to be in real time, but in the fractal world, you don't need to be in real time, you need to be in really time. Again, the call was dispatched at 3:46.36 on the CAD. That's when the 12 minutes started, but the crew wasn't notified until 3:47.08. The call was over by 7 seconds. The delay in verbal dispatch of this system was 32 seconds, well above the 7 seconds. We asked for an exemption on that. That was denied.
What did you ask for exemption?
It'd be CAD number 42.19, or excuse me, 4219. I don't have my exemption.
Right there.
The exemption, let's see. Yes, that exemption was gonna be on February 1.
You requested exemption on February
Yes.
1st for a call in November.
Yes, and I believe during that time period of this call, I believe we were having issues getting reports, and I believe that the CAD system on generating reports, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Samantha, was somewhat lackluster at that point in time. So when we got the information from Central, that is when we requested the time exemption. Doesn't matter. It still doesn't change the fact that there's a technical error and human factor involved in this, that 32 seconds was delayed, but we were only over 7 seconds. We'll look at one more call. We only should have to have one to be over the 90% mark, but we'll look at the next call. Again, submitted on February the 2nd. This was 11:27 is when that call was ran. I do know the reporting system for both of these calls were down during that time. Mr. Tyndall wasn't getting his reports regularly. This call was 11:22, and I believe the CAD outage or the CAD reporting errors can continue to the first or second week in December. This particular call was out by 2 seconds. 2 seconds, 12 minutes and 2 seconds. CAD dispatch was at 1513.57. That's when it landed on the computer. Crew is not in the truck. And then it was verbally dispatched to the crew at 1514.06. Again, 9 seconds delay, and we were 2 seconds over. We feel like we should get exemptions for that on both accounts. Once the crew was audibly dispatched, the crew went within en route after being audibly dispatched via the radio, again, because they were in their office. When we start looking at fractal responses and we start looking at errors with technology as well as human factors, we can't rule with the iron fist. 2 seconds, but it took 9 seconds, and that's just on a preliminary investigation that Samantha did. So we feel like we should get an exemption for that one. And again, the CAD reporting was down. The other call that was 7 seconds over, it took 32 seconds for the crew to be notified that they had a call. We feel like we should get exemptions for both of those calls, which would put us well over the 90% at that point. Thank you.
You know, I think you should have got exemptions for those calls too. The only problem is that, well, one, you didn't make your times, and number two, you didn't submit them in the time frame that they're supposed to be submitted in. Another problem is, just to make sure, Jeannie, does the time start when it hits the CAD in their trucks or your dispatch? So does the time start counting when it hits their CAD in the truck?
Yes.
Okay. Several months ago, Chief England had got with Jason and you and 911 and Jamie, I believe it was, at 911. And in October, the times were sent to your software so you could have the times immediately as soon as the call's over. That's how ours in emergency reporting does. As soon as the call's over, if we don't call dispatch, we don't wait for dispatch to send us anything. It's already automatically populated in our software. In October, he has records of those things being exported out to you starting in October. Are you receiving those?
Chief, our system is, the previous, I know that this board has changed considerably since it was started. Everybody's new members, except Ms. Pike.
I'm not new.
Everybody, yay.
I'm not new. I've been here for 2 years.
My apologies, 2 years. Our system has been, this board voted that they would only accept numbers that was generated by 911. That's the reason Mr. Tyndall waits on the report to come from 911.
Those numbers come from 911 CAD, when Jamie from 911 sends them to
Okay.
you, exports those to you.
We weren't getting, I believe that's the reason there wasn't any reports for December and January, because we weren't getting November reports.
Right, but my question is, we get it sent to our software. Do you get it in your software, just like what we do, since we have records since October of last year it being sent to you?
We do have timestamps in our software, but we do not get timestamps of when the radio is dispatched. That's the reason we have to look to.
I guess my
Ms.
point
Ferris.
with that is in November of last year, if you get those times sent to you, how come you didn't say, hey, we missed this by 2 seconds and it was, how come we didn't look at it then?
Well, and it's a good question, a great question. If we would have known that it was a delay of 32 seconds in the radio log of the verbal dispatch, we would have at that point in time. But we have to investigate these calls after the fact. That's the reason that we come back in February and done this along with the CAD report. And so again, Samantha's done a great job on going backwards in time to look at these calls. Yes, we get the 13.46 or the 3.46 on our CAD, we get that. But we never know how much is the lag time before the verbal dispatch. That has to come from them pulling their audio records.
I understand that. I also feel, just like what you said a while ago, I've never run an ambulance service, but if I know I'm gonna get fined $10,000 if I don't make my fractal times, I believe I'll be having my crews check their times when they run calls to make sure it's within the 8 or 12 minute.
Oh, yes,
Time
yes, sir,
frame.
yes, sir. But on the time exemption, you've got to put why you're asking for the exemption. We didn't know at the time when this very call ran of it being out of compliance of 2 seconds. We didn't know the reason of it being out of compliance was because of the radio dispatch was lagging. We didn't know that. We only know that after we present that to Miss Samantha, and she goes back in time and pairs the audio up with the CAD for the dispatch. That's the reason we have to investigate that. We're not privy to that information with our software system that is the same software system as the police and fire use for us. We only see timestamps, we don't see the radio log.
Hey Jeannie, how much of a lag is it?
It varies from time to time. I mean, what's going on, the computer, the dispatcher. There is no concrete time on it. They have to dispatch for first response and they have to dispatch for fire, plus if they're taking a phone call at the same time. That can vary largely. I mean, there's no standard for a lag on it. If we're exporting to their software, that has a dispatch time is one of the things we export. They can see that they busted their time if they're using their software. And then ask us to review it at that time.
Is that true, David? You can look at your software and see that?
We see the time of dispatch, the time en route, the time arrived, and the time of transport and the time clear. We see that. We have to rely on Miss Samantha to go back and pair the audio up with the actual time it hit the CAD on the computer, because we don't have that ability. And
I guess, just so everybody in here is on the same page that may not understand it, it's what she said. Can you do that? Can you do that with your software? Can you tell him again what you just said?
Yeah, we export the dispatch time and the arrival time, the times that he's
Mhm.
talking about. So
Are-
if they busted the time on it, if they're using their software that they wanted us to export to, then yes, they know that they busted it, and they could have asked us at that point in time, hey, we busted times on this. Can you look at it for us or something along that line at that particular point in time? Us exporting the reports to them nightly, when we had the downtime with our CAD system, they were still getting it in their software since October. So I'm not gonna try to account for every however many seconds it takes a dispatcher to verbally dispatch a call, because that's gonna fluctuate hugely. It could be 2 or 3, 4, 5 seconds, because that's how long it takes to push buttons and clear the tones, to a little longer. 20 to 30 seconds, no, I'm not gonna say that was something that I'm considering an acceptable standard, but if somebody on the computer fire was talking at the same time, and they were answering them real quick, and then going back and forth, there's a lot of variables in it. But we don't have a, you will dispatch a call within
So
And
you
Chief,
can
let me
see it-
say that,
You can see it
let
in your software.
let me
right?
say that 911 does a great job at what they're doing, but we've just had an omission that there's errors in the system again. We're looking at 2 calls, 7 seconds and 2 seconds. Your 911 director just admitted this, okay? It doesn't change the fact. We're dealing with a hard 11-minute and 59-second rule, but we're dealing with a system that's fluid. That's our appeal on this matter. Thank you.
I don't know if my question was answered with that, but
If I understood correctly, they get immediately when the call's over whether or not they met their time. And if they have a question about that,
They can ask.
call dispatch and ask for clarification immediately. There's no reason for it to take 2 months.
okay, that's what I was asking. All right, we got any more comments? Any more input on this? All right. I guess at this point, the penalties have already been assessed to them. They have appealed it. So now we have to vote to see whether or not we want to,
The motion would be to uphold the penalty, rescind the
Reduce.
penalty, or adjust the penalty to some other amount, and then that would have to be seconded and voted on.
do I have a motion for one of those? I'll have to get a motion for something on it.
I'll make a motion to amend.
All right, a motion
To-
to amend.
To amend to what we are going to propose in the future on what we're gonna vote on in the future for this time. That we amend it to what has been written in this proposal
So you're saying the
by
5,000?
Mr. Alexander.
5,000. Can we do that since we haven't?
Well, I think,
adopted it?
if we have to look at not only, we're looking to, I guess you need to be more specific on what we're amending. I mean, because we're amending to change the times and the monetary and the points
The-
in the future.
Okay.
So are you saying that we'll change the times?
For this one, the penalty's been assessed for,
Tony, you're saying you're making a motion to amend the penalty to $5,000?
yes,
For this one only?
this one only.
I'm making a motion to adjust it to 5,000, but keep the 12-minute standard that we have in place, because if not, we're gonna have to go back on all of them and see if they fit the 13-minute.
Right, so it's just changes the financial penalty, not the basis of it.
Not, yes.
All right, so I have a motion to change the financial penalty to $5,000
For this one only?
for this one only. I have a motion, do I have a second? That would be Ms. Pike's motion.
I'll second that.
All right, got a second. Roll call, please.
Captain Ward,
Aye.
Randy Davis,
Aye.
Lily Pike,
Aye.
Dee Dee Hayes.
All right, motion passed, 4-0. All right, do we have anybody that wants to make any presentations or anything to say?
I'd like to, once more before I have to leave,
Yes, sir.
prior commitments.
We'd like to appeal this to the city council.
Yes,
And
sir.
also within your ordinance, in your penalties, there's no provision for an amendment. You guys just voted on an amendment of $5,000 to a rule that your city council has not even passed as of yet.
If I'm not mistaken, we have the right to uphold it, to dismiss it, or amend.
Correct.
Is that not right?
And we amended it to the 5,000 because of the upcoming
Because
vote.
that's what they made a motion to amend it to.
Well, we'd like to put you on formal notice. We intend to appeal to the city council.
All right, thank you. All right, has anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Please state your name, and it's still the 5-minute limit.
Jeremy Goforth, reside at 3725 South Woodrow Road, Decatur, Alabama. There's a lot of things I could say. I'm gonna try to be as nice as I can towards everybody. Appreciate what y'all do. Tracy, you know, and Ashley, I know I appreciate what y'all have always done at the fire department. To me, the standard's always set by the fire department. And the way the fire department handles their calls and the way they handle their patients. Totally different animal when it comes to first response. This has been going on for years. Decatur's growing. And time again, all you ever hear is stuff that financially benefits first response. They're not ever worried about the patients. They're not ever worried about the call times. They're not ever worried about that. It's all about reducing the fines, reducing the mileage on the trucks, reducing new trucks. You agree to one thing with them, they agree to it, then they don't like it and they come back and want to move it. To me, if the ordinances and everything are in place and they've been in place and they've asked you to change them and you've worked with them, it's kind of like with the bond. It's like every time you ask them to do something, they don't do it. What other businesses in town, I've owned a business for 15 years, when the building department puts certain restrictions in, y'all put certain restrictions in as the fire on the fire marshal side, I have to abide by those. I can't come to the city council or come to the building department or the fire department and ask y'all, hey, I don't want to abide by this. I'm not going to. What are you going to do? You're going to shut me down. So I don't have people's lives in my hands every single day. They do. So why do they get to kind of tiptoe around and kind of tell y'all what they're going to do, in essence, okay? So, you know, I just ask, you know, uphold them to the same standards that the fire department's upheld to. Y'all make y'all's response times, you know? Y'all are great with the critical care and everything, and you know, all it ever is excuses and about money. It's never about the reluctance that they can't do any better. You know, they can't put more trucks on the road, but they can go open up another ambulance service in a different state. You know, so if you're not meeting your call times here, you're not meeting your quota here, they're not trying to do anything to better that. They just come up here and ask y'all to find them less money and give them more call times. Is that helping the citizens out any? I don't think so. And I've had to deal with it personally, unfortunately. I don't know if any of y'all have, but once you have to deal with it on a personal level like that, it makes it a whole different ball game, and you actually see the totality of what can happen when people aren't held accountable with the rules and regulations that are put into place. And just like y'all, they have hundreds of people's lives in their hands every day. So, you know, it's up to y'all to hold them accountable for that. And I'm just asking that y'all please, for the citizens and everybody that calls 911, just please make sure y'all make them responsible and hold them accountable for what they do and don't do, just like any other business. So thank y'all very much.
Thanks, sir. You got anybody else would like to speak? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, I got a motion. Second. All right, meeting adjourned.